What's the point of this No Kings protest tomorrow? I was having a discussion with a colleague yesterday, a different colleague, and she asked a really great question. Does it help? Does a mass protest really make a difference in people's lives? I'm a political scientist. You might expect that I would know that. It raised a good question. I mean, I don't do work on social movements. Mostly sociologists do that, but I'm familiar with that work. So I do have something I think I can add to this conversation. I mean, the first thing is I think obvious, and my colleague understood, that if we think back to the 20th century and the civil rights movement, that persistence of civil disobedience, mass demonstrations, in combination with other things, certainly made a difference and moved forward public policy that was designed to bring us toward greater democracy. So that much is true. Isn't that right? But I've been thinking more and more about World War II, I think as many people are, and I was thinking about Noel Neumann's theory of the spiral of silence, and I think that applies here in a very important way. In trying to explain how the Holocaust happened, how Nazi Germany got to where it was, Elizabeth Noel Neumann offered us this notion of a spiral of silence. And it is a communication theory, but it's also a public opinion theory, a cognitive processing theory. And it really has to do with how people feel or think or believe their own feelings, thoughts, beliefs match those of the broader society. You can Google it and get much more specific, but let me tell you quickly, it works like this. If I perceive that what I believe is a minority opinion, that is, that most people in the world don't think the way I think, I'm less likely to speak out because of the norm of social acceptance. I don't want people to think I don't belong. It's important to remember that it's about my perception, not whether or not it's true. We didn't have sophisticated polling techniques in the 1940s, so Germans weren't able to know for sure whether or not their feelings matched, their beliefs matched their fellow country folks. The reason it's called spiral of silence is because as people who believe that their ideas are in the minority become more and more quiet, it spirals because it's easier to perceive that that's accurate. Because what we're hearing then in the atmosphere are things that are contrary to what we believe. So we're even more likely to be silent. Spiral downward into silence. And so my response to my colleague is that it's unlikely that President Trump will look on his television screen and see millions of people protesting and say, you know what, I think I've been doing this wrong. That's not likely to happen. What can happen, though, is that those demonstrations, if they're significant and if they're covered by media, will have a tendency to disrupt the spiral of silence. Now, I have to point out, this is a decades-old theory, and I think we really have to consider how accurate it is today, especially with respect to social media. People are not afraid to express contrary opinions because they can do so rather anonymously, they can do so under a pseudonym, etc. So social media landscape does change the nature of the possibility of spiral of silence. But that's a scholarly matter. That's something that we need to study, measure, analyze, etc. Generally speaking, though, the theory does address how people feel about being socially accepted. And so, nonetheless, coverage of mass demonstrations may lead people who perceive their beliefs to be in the minority to have more support than they otherwise would without those protests. So that's my thought about any possible benefit of the No Kings rallies tomorrow.